Life isn't fair and it doesn't treat the good guys better or the bad guys worse. Sometimes people don't want to hear the truth because they don't want their illusions destroyed. There's a famous quote for you. Something very applicable to today's conflict in Ukraine is the virtue signalers with Ukrainian flags in their bio emotionally swarm you for speaking views that conflict with their current paradigm. Now those of us with the ability to critically think can overcome these obstacles, filtering information out, taking things with a grain of salt, and viewing it from both perspectives to realize the truth is somewhere in between. Remember a while ago, this video was used as evidence that Russia's defense will be simply rolled over. You couldn't even talk to anybody. They were laughing and couldn't sustain a conversation. Ukraine took serious losses and has not even reached the Dragon's Teeth, which is one of the 5 defensive belts built over the Russians in the past 5 to 8 months. And now we're going to take a look at the Ukrainian offensive on the ground and the equipment that's been destroyed. So guys, welcome to The Real Report. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, make sure to hit the like button, leave a comment down below at the end of the video, and subscribe with the bell to stay up to date, in the know, in the loop. For those of you who are saying they can evacuate and repair a lot of these vehicles, we've got some bad news for you. Ukraine lost at least 4+ M2A2 Bradleys, the ODS-SA, and 1 Leopard 2A6 in the recent counterattack in Zaporizhzhia region. An interesting side note from Kim.com, this is a quote from him. I'm going to read it off because it's worth sharing. As predicted by military experts, the casualty numbers of Ukrainian forces in the counteroffensive are over 10-1. They get slaughtered. Russia dominates with air superiority, 10 times the artillery advantage, mined battlefields, real-time targeting data for smart bombs and missiles. Meanwhile, the CIA and other 3-letter agencies, social media bots, and Pentagon-directed media stenographers are winning the propaganda war by mass brainwashing the public with stories that the Ukrainian losses are grossly exaggerated by Russia, and the Ukrainian forces are merely probing enemy lines when the footage clearly shows otherwise. This counteroffensive will forever taint NATO as an alliance of reckless fools, which sent hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian men to die because NATO could not accept that its plan to unbalance Russia had failed, too arrogant to admit defeat, and history will judge them harshly. End quote. Of course, we're looking at more footage here from the battle over the past couple of days, and a fiasco is when the enemy loses thousands of men and hundreds of combat vehicles to advance a kilometer into the first of your 5 defensive belts and is already being driven back. Some of my favorite comments that I've seen online today: nothing to worry about. In the end, Ukraine will win for sure. The US and Europe have so much resources. Russia can dream about this. The history of all wars shows in the end, only the side with the healthiest economy can win a war. When Ukraine loses 10% of the Bradleys and the US has sent within 1 day, how long do you think the US and the West are going to continue supplying Ukraine with material when they see these are the results? Granted, these results are because the West forced their hand to launch this counteroffensive in the first place. I have no issue pointing the finger. Now, there is a limit to how much material, equipment, manpower that can be invested into this counteroffensive. I believe they had 70,000 men. And let's roll the next clip here. Here, out of the pictures from Intel Slava, you can see BMP-2s, M2A2 Bradleys, more Bradleys, and a Leopard tank. Supposedly, they've taken out 5 German tanks, 6 American infantry fighting vehicles, 3 American MRAPs, the MAXXPro, 1 Dutch armored personnel carrier, a Czech T-72, a BMR, and a French VAB armored car. I'll cycle through the pictures here. There's a Leopard, T-72, MAXXPro, Leopard, Bradley, MAXXPro. Here's another one, YPR 765, and another Leopard 2A4. Next, I'll share a couple of thoughts from Lord Babo on Twitter because I think it's worth sharing, talking about the game changers that are always the next big hype train for the war in Ukraine, the end-all be-all. This is how it works. Situation looks dire for Ukraine. There's no movement or Russian advances. Public opinion starts to shift towards negotiations, and people are tired of the war. You make up a new story about a weapon you announce to be the thing that will allow Ukraine to win. Just wait a bit. It'll all be great. Leopard tanks. This creates dialogue and hope. People are busy and discuss. Everybody gets excited. After a while, the weapon gets sent to Ukraine and people trained to operate them. Everybody's excited to see the game changers in action, since that's the decisive moment, right? But these weapons are held back. Military leaders know that it's all BS and just empty hype. So what needs to be done? Of course, we have to introduce a new game changer that will allow Ukraine to win decisively, but this needs to be hyped before the previous game changer is blown up. Now it's F-16s, of course. The old game changer failed on the battlefield, but it's okay. There's a new thing, and that will come soon. And after you get through all those points, you can simply go back to the very first one and rinse repeat, just a game of public opinion management and constant manufacturing to be able to avoid negotiations and drag out the war, so warmongering rhinos can continue to profit off the military-industrial complex. Hopping over to Simplicius on Substack is certainly worth an honorary mention. He was talking about the tanks today. Most of you are probably wondering, geez, how many tanks does Ukraine have left? The Pentagon leak stated the exact number, and though it's hard to know how accurate they are, here's what the leaks had for the total Ukrainian main battle tanks. In storage, 495, fielded 802, destroyed 468. Now, the question is the 495 storage is difficult to parse because we have no way of knowing if those in storage means they're complete junkers without the ability to be refurbished, or whether they're actually able to be restored and put back in action. Now, these numbers are nearly half a year old, so of course the casualties have quadrupled since then, and I'm sure it's the same for equipment. Nearly 100 visible confirmed total armor losses in just the past few days of the counteroffensive have been documented. Shoigu claimed 52 main battle tanks were destroyed, and Russia lost supposedly 15. So even if we said they each lost 50 each, one side can replace them quickly, and the other cannot. You can only ship them so fast. And an interesting side note, well, why not get the Germans to get rid of their Leopards so that we can sell them the new Abrams X tank? 200 IQ play for you. That would mean about 25% of the hypothetical 400 tank concentration in this region has been destroyed. It's always interesting how great they are at changing the narrative, too. Out of CNN just today, Friday, June 9th, 2023, Ukrainian forces suffer stiff resistance and losses in assault on Russian lines. You might be thinking, Ukrainian forces have suffered heavy losses in equipment and soldiers as they met greater than expected resistance from Russian forces in their first attempt to breach Russian lines. In the east of the country in recent days. One of the U.S. officials described the losses, which include U.S. supplied, of course, armored personnel vehicles, as significant. So let me ask you guys a question. If CNN, the government shill, is telling you they are experiencing stiff resistance and taking severe casualties, what do you guys think that actually means, numerically? Another slow shift of the Overton window, the true purpose of Ukraine's counteroffensive. Kiev needs to just show the Russians the war is not worth fighting for. Apparently just bleed them out into a stalemate. I just think it's funny how every time Ukraine suffers a defeat, a new article comes out saying, well, Bakhmut's not that important. This place isn't that important. Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant, not that important. Here you can look at an overview of the defensive lines that Ukraine is trying to penetrate currently. But do not fear, US announces new $2.1 billion package of military aid to Ukraine. Of course, also June 9th, 2023, 10:18 a.m. this morning. The new assistance package will include funding for more Patriot missile battery munitions, Hawk air defense systems and missiles, and small Puma drones that can be launched by hand. So again, if you guys haven't already, go ahead and hit the like button. Really would appreciate it. You guys are going to help me out a ton. Hit the subscribe button with the bell to stay up to date so you don't miss the next Real Report.